The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Mark. Jesus began to teach his disciples that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He said all this quite openly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciple, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." He called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "If anyone want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." The Gospel of the Lord. For the past 12 months, we've had a devil of a time. Masks, distancing, a certain amount of anxiety, and too many deaths. You know all of this. But my reason for beginning with some of this, and with the devil, that AKA Satan, is right in the fore and center of the gospel that I read, the gospel for today. Satan and other unpleasantries like having to take up our cross to follow Jesus are very central to the gospel reading for the day. And though I know each one of us here has experienced enough of unpleasantries in the last year, I think I'm somewhat called upon to talk about Satan, the cross, and the pandemic, in an attempt to sort of understand what's been happening to us, to come to grips with what's been going on in our lives. I think it's only human that we want to sort of point a finger of blame, blame someone else. We want to blame China, or we want to blame the medical profession, or we want to blame politicians. We may want to blame Satan, even blame God. But blaming God won't do. Blaming God won't do from my perspective is because God is not a manipulator. He's not manipulating his creation. He's not a blundering, meddlesome old fellow. He's not a mixer, Mr. Fix-It, if you will. He or she is a lover. That's what God is all about, according to our Bible and according to our beliefs. God is a lover. God does not get his way with creation, from my point of view, by trying to control it, but through his attractiveness. Rather than push us, God is wooing us. He's in front of us, drawing us to himself, rather than sort of behind us with his foot in our back, pushing us. I say that God isn't controlling us as something I think we all learned, that there's no way to control the ones we love. We can't control our spouses. We can't control our children. We can't control anybody or anything. Control simply destroys love. That's at the heart of it. To control someone is really to destroy the relationship we have with them. So God, he or she, is a lover, not controlling every little thing that's going on. Obviously not controlling this pandemic in any way. God is having his way with creation, not through control, but through attractiveness, not pushiness. I think God has figured out that to control us would only destroy any love that we have for him. And you might not be comfortable with a God who, for the sake of love, would allow quite so much rather risky freedom to take place in his creation. I'm not. but he or she God seems to want it that way. God will not always keep us safe, but God will always love us. God's not the big CEO in the heavens, but the lover in your life. Satan is not in your life, not in this world, not anywhere really. So don't blame Satan either. I want to tell you a few little things about Satan that I may have mentioned years past in a sermon. I'll be brief. If this were a class, I could go on and bore you to a great extent, but I'll stay brief. Some of you may realize that the word Satan in Hebrew is simply the everyday, ordinary word for adversary. No capital S at the beginning of it. It's just the word for adversary. It's not a name. The word Satan is not a name. It's just the word adversary. But then as time went on in the history of the Hebrew people, the word Satan began to change somewhat, began to designate not only an adversary, but someone who would accuse you, the accuser of persons before God even. Not just someone that would be an adversary, but an accuser, almost like a prosecuting attorney, if you will. So eventually, as time went by, Satan became not only the accuser of humans, but the accuser of God. Accusing God even, slandering God even. And at this point in history, Satan became a mythological being, a mythical creature, opposing God, destructive in creation, dangerous to human beings, but a mythical creature. And a mythical creature really has no power, no ability to create anything. Satan, a mythical creature, cannot create cancer, COVID-19, or even a hangnail. Back in 1970, some of you here were back in 1970 watching TV when I was, I think. Back in 1970, a black comedian named Flip Wilson had a very popular TV show. One of the highlights was when Flip Wilson would put on a dress and a wig and play the part of Geraldine Jones. Now, Geraldine Jones was always in some sort of trouble, and poor old Geraldine was always getting caught. And every time Geraldine was caught, she would say, "The devil made me do it." And this got a really good laugh at every show, and many of us kind of looked forward to that part of the show. It got a good laugh because everybody watching the TV show knew that the devil had nothing to do with it. It was all Geraldine Jones. She had no one else to blame. Well, let me move from Geraldine back to the gospel for today and what Jesus could have meant when he said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan." You know, the set to began when Jesus told them, his disciples, that Jesus was going to be arrested, tried, and executed and killed. Peter couldn't quite take that, and so he began to rebuke Jesus. Jesus was rather harsh with Peter, but I think he was harsh because he saw that Peter was trying to prevent him from embracing the destiny that God has set before him. And so, for a moment there, Peter became Jesus' adversary, trying to turn him from what he knew he had to do, trying to redirect Peter. So I think what Jesus was doing was using the word Satan in that original sense of the word, an adversary. Peter was not a devil. But then things moved on a little bit more. And the devil, a.k.a. Satan, to me is less intimidating in today's reading than that idea, and I'll read it. If you want to become my followers, let them deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. But I ask you to listen to that carefully. If you listen carelessly, you'll see that the cross is something we take up. The cross is not something that's forced upon us, thrust upon us. The cross is something we take up. So the cross is not a symbol of COVID-19, cancer, contrary friends, a dysfunctional family, or a job we hate. None of those things that just come upon us. It's something we take up. The cross is something we choose for ourselves. So please choose wisely. The clue to how we are to choose is also found in this little lesson, and it's in the one little tiny word, deny. We are to deny ourselves and take up our cross. But I don't think that denial means no more chocolate, no more good single malt scotch, no more shopping, no more binge TV watching. That's not what it's all about. It's about moving aside a little bit so another person can take the center of the life we're living. Making room for that other person. Let them be the center of our little world for a while. Making room for those other people. It means being compassionate rather than adversarial, because that really is a way of moving ourselves sort of out of the spotlight, out of the center. And moving ourselves out of the center of our life is really a form of self-denial. That's a clear self-denial. So I do believe in the sense of, self-denial being something we can choose, that the pandemic has taught us something rather important about ourselves. It's taught us that we need each other. We need one another. And I think this need for one another has shown up in the little word fatigue, that we're fatigued by what's going on. We're tired of being separated from one another, not being able to get together. We're tired of not being with the people we love and want to be with. Grandparents express it by saying they want to hug their grandchildren. Young people act it out by going to bars when it's really still a bit dangerous to go and party in a bar. And all the rest of us just get frustrated and grumpy. We get grumpy because we're social creatures and we really need one another. Our lives are better when we're with one another. We are social creatures. We need that fellowship. We're created for each other. And without one another, without being able to get together, we get kind of miserable. It's in our relationships that we thrive, and it's by our compassion that we follow Jesus. So Jesus knew that Peter wasn't all that bad, and that the devil wasn't making anybody do anything. A mythological creature cannot be responsible for our problems, nor can God, unless we mistake God for a manager rather than a lover. So this pandemic, if nothing more, on the positive side, has shown us that we are happiest, and I think more healthy either, happiest and healthiest, with our arms around the ones we care for. So, get your shots and hug the one you love.